And stream on. So now I can say, welcome listener to the one viewer waiting.
Yay!
So shall we get started?
Let's do this thing.
This is the Android Buffet Podcast, episode number 551, recorded Thursday, August 12th, 2021, in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Yeah, that was a very special opening because once again we seem to have live listeners.
Oh! I wonder if they think our audio sucks.
I don't know. You'll have to ask Daryl. I think it's
Daryl,
Daryl.
how's the audio?
Yeah.
Please be nice. Give us good news. We like good news.
I'm working on it. It seems like it's a constant battle.
It's weird, right?
Yeah, because I've put a lot of time into this, and then it works in testing, and then after testing, something happens.
Chaos of production.
Yeah, and I did strip out a bunch of things. I put in time, effort, money. Anyway, heard it may be a bit crackly. Sorry about the crackling. I don't hear anything, but unless you're counting the sound of the humming of my humidifier in the background, I suppose.
The sound that I hear reaching my ears from my mouth sounds like perfect audio clarity.
And from my side?
You sound fine to me.
Okay, I don't know.
But you often send somebody else different audio than you send to me.
Well, I rewired the whole thing. So right now, just to sort of explain to you, there are two setups. There's the mobile setup, which is what I use when I'm not in my apartment, and then there's the apartment setup. And they're actually now much more similar than they used to be. So what happens here is as follows. So the audio from the microphone where I'm talking to you, I switched it to a dual XLR USB microphone. So the XLR goes into a USB audio interface. The USB output goes into the computer so you can hear me. So you're hearing me over the USB, whereas everybody else is hearing me over XLR, which goes into a device. This is essentially a 2-input Behringer USB audio interface. So I removed the mixer for the foreseeable future. So you're in port 1 and I'm in port 2. So you would hear me on the left and you on the right. And then when I mix it, you'd hear it in stereo. But anybody on the YouTube stream would hear one or the other because I'm not mixing it anymore. So they're hearing the exact same audio going through another thing. Now, the problem is this. When it leaves, the way that it leaves the USB audio interface to get into the streamer, to be merged in with the HDMI output from the computer, which shows the show notes, it goes over a output cable from the USB audio interface into the input of the streamer. So I experimented with doing that digitally, but there were some issues. So the only solution I could think of right now that might work better is if I had that audio device, the USB audio device going into the computer, then going out the loopback interface into the HDMI output. And that just seems a bit weird. So, work in progress. Anyway, so I've been working on a bunch of techie things.
Techie things?
Well, related to home automation. So I keep having outages here of internet. And did I tell you the story about the wire? I think I did, with They came, they found a wire from the house to the node that hadn't been replaced since 1992, and the technician replaced it. But the technician is not the one who buries the wire, so they left it on the lawn.
You can thank unions for that, man.
I wouldn't know if he's unionized, so I choose not to assume. But either way, he said that he wasn't the guy who does the burying, that he didn't have the shovel. So he ran the wire, and now the wires are orange. So that he said that was because they started switching to orange cable for outdoors, so that they wouldn't accidentally be cut. They'd be more noticeable. But I was worried that somebody, let's say, mowing the lawn might cut them anyway. So I waited patiently they said within 6 days, somebody will come and bury your wire. So I waited 9 days and nobody came to bury the wire. So one night they shut off, the entire neighborhood went down for like 2 hours, and I had some free time. So I called the local cable concern and said, your message says that you're down for maintenance. It would have been nice if you told me you were going to do maintenance in the middle of the night, because that would have been helpful to know. But by the way, since I have some time, I'm just calling you to remind you that you never sunk the wire. They said, what wire? I said, the one on my lawn. So they said, well, we'll call dispatch and they'll make an appointment with you tomorrow to have the wire done. So I said, how long does that take? The gentleman on the phone said 6 days. I said, that's what the guy who installed the wire told me, and it's now been 9. So the next morning, dispatch called, and they said we'll be there on Sunday. So guess who did not show up on Sunday?
Santa Claus. No.
Well, actually, both of those things are true. Neither of those individuals showed up, but I was not expecting them. I was expecting the local cable company to bury this wire that was sitting on the lawn. They did not show up. So they did not show up on Monday. So on Tuesday, I've been working here, and I'm working, and all of a sudden the internet goes down. Guess what happened?
They cut the cable. A guy was mowing the lawn and cut the cable.
No, the 2 guys with the shovel showed up, and they were burying the cable, but to bury it, they had to temporarily unhook it. Of course, they unhooked it while I was in the middle of a meeting where I was the one talking. So the cable's finally buried, but the internet keeps going down. So I'm getting much more reliable internet when it's up, but there's something going on at the node, which they can't fix it by replacing cables to this building. So I decided that this was a solution that needed Home Assistant. So you've heard me talk about my some of the ways that I've used Home Assistant to monitor things, and I said, well, how can I monitor whether or not the internet is down and get myself like some useful graph data about when it's going down that I could share with the cable company to complain?
Ping.
Exactly. But what do I ping?
Something that's always up. Better yet, 2 things.
Well, I now have Home Assistant, and it does have a ping component with a binary sensor that essentially will be pinging Google's public DNS server every 5 minutes. 8.8.8.8. Easy to remember, and very likely to be up.
Really?
Should I have gone with 1.1.1.1?
I would have gone with 1.1.1.1, but...
Well, I'm not using it for DNS.
I'm kind of surprised it responds to pings.
1.1.1.1 also responds to pings.
Huh.
And I think 9.9.9.9 does also. But I figured, it won't really bother the people at Google. And whatever you can say about Google, their services are probably likely to be up.
That's not actually going to a specific computer.
Yeah, but I'm using it to check whether or not my internet is working.
I like it.
So that's why I wanted something, because if let's say, picked google.com and looked up their IP address, then I wouldn't necessarily, they might change it in the future. I figured something that like that, where they deliberately make it easy and it routes to multiple places. Unless the cable company starts blocking connections to 8.8.8.8, I was pretty likely to be able to use it. And I wasn't sure if isn't 1.1.1.1 Cloudflare. I thought they
I
aren't.
think so.
I thought they were more likely to consider it potentially malicious behavior and block it. Although I don't know why 5 pings every 5 minutes is malicious, but I thought Google was less likely to be annoyed, but who knows. So then the other problem was I also the other night had a random power failure. Been that type of summer. It's been hot here. So the problem is I have a few smart light bulbs. Do you know what happens to smart light bulbs when the power is restored?
They all turn on?
Yeah, there are some bulbs that actually will remember their state. These are older bulbs, so they don't have that. I have to look and see if I can find one that does. But so at 4 in the morning, I'm sound asleep, and the lights all turn on.
That's fun.
Yeah, well, not only that, a few other things happened. So some of the electronic devices started booting up and making noises. So I have a smart display, and when it boots up, it makes a doom doom noise.
That's fun.
Yeah, so what I really want in the middle of the night is to be woken up by all of my devices chiming back into their power thing. There's not much I can do about that. But the second question is, how do I monitor a power failure? So how do I know? What?
Pings.
No, because the last time that I had a power failure of over 20 minutes when I was awake, because I don't know how long the one was where I was asleep for obvious reasons, I was asleep. The UPS that I have hooked up to the router and the cable modem actually kept the internet on and running in the house for the entire time the power outage occurred.
Yes, but was your home assistant on?
That's on a separate UPS. So yes, it was actually.
So you would need, okay, so here's what you do. You have a Raspberry Pi
Mm-hmm.
plugged in to a non-UPS. And all it's doing is it's pinging your home assistant, right? And your home assistant is logging that it got pinged. And when you lack pings, you lack power.
Well, I came up with a different solution.
Okay.
NUT. Network UPS tools. So, at least 2 of the UPSs that I have a data port that you can hook into a computer. That can report the status of the UPS and it's designed to allow the computer to know that it's time to gracefully shut down before the power goes out.
Yep.
Home Assistant has a integration for NUT.
Yay.
So I have 2 UPSs. Now, one of them uses an old school APC data cable, which I didn't have. But the other one, which is the one that runs the network cabling, actually uses a USB cable. So right above the network cabling is my old NAS, which I brought up here and installed after I had to upgrade the one that I was using most of the time. So this one, it's older, it doesn't have the power that it needs to, but it can run here. And what I do is I use it as a backup site. So the one that in my apartment sends its data here for backup. So it has 2 USB ports. So I plugged it into there. It has the option of running NUT on there. I had it run NUT on there, and then I installed the Home Assistant NUT component. So now Home Assistant is getting the data from the NAS of whether or not there's power to the NAS. And my assumption is that if there's not power to the NAS, there's not power to the other thing. So I can now add in the functionality so that the little computer, which is elsewhere in the building, that runs Home Assistant will know that the power is off, or it can just get it from this particular sensor that's integrated to Home Assistant, and I can tell the computer to gracefully shut down.
Cool. That's a better solution than I came up with.
Well, the other thing is I'll have data because if a lot of the power outages around here are less than 30 minutes. So I'll have a lot of data about when the power goes down. Now, the other part of it is, in theory, I can notify myself when the power went down. So if the power goes down but the internet is still up, I can have Home Assistant send a notification to me wherever I am that the power is now off. Now, I can't have it send me a notification that the internet is off for obvious reasons. However,
Yes.
guess what I can do? I can have it send me a notification that the internet has come back on. So when that binary sensor toggles from offline to online, I know that there was a outage. And then I could subsequently, if I want to know how long that outage is, I could log back in.
Well, look at you all fancy.
I thought so.
I think so too.
Yeah, unfortunately now I have some additional problems because you know that I've been doing this show from a basement where I've also been working while I've been hanging around here, as opposed to my apartment, which is not a basement. So it's been very hot here, but I haven't noticed because I have not gone above ground. But so there was a different problem. So I'm in a basement. I'm in the basement has two sides, and in between the two sides are the stairs that go up to the non-basement, so to the first floor. So on the other side of the basement from where I have this little office, there's like an old refrigerator freezer that's used to store extra food.
Mm-hmm.
And also the basement has a series of dehumidifiers because there's moisture down here. So the same power outage cut out all of the humidifiers, and it didn't cut out, obviously did cut out the freezer. It didn't damage the freezer, but there was another problem with that. So all the dehumidifiers cut out, and the basement was starting to get humid. And nobody noticed. So I have a request to install additional humidity sensors down here that would alert if the humidity got too high, so that somebody could go turn on these dehumidifiers, because they do, like my lights, they do not remember the last state they were in when the power is off. So they go back to an off state if the power gets cut. Which seems like a bad thing, but you know, I didn't design them, and I don't know if it's worth replacing dehumidifiers for that reason. In addition, there's also a smell issue, which I probably should have noticed since I'm hanging around down here. Well, no, the smell issue turned out not to be the humidity. It turned out to be the fact that somebody came down to one of those freezers, took out some meat to bring upstairs to cook, and forgot about it for 24 hours.
Ah,
Yeah. Well, the room that I'm in, I keep the door closed because I have an air conditioner down here, because it also gets hot down here when it's, not all the time, but when it's 96 degrees outside, which it was earlier today, it does tend to get a bit hot down here. So since I wasn't opening the doors, I didn't notice. So unfortunately, what I can't figure out is there such a thing as an odor sensor that I have particulate sensors, but I'm wondering what sensor would have picked up the smell of rotting chicken.
I have no idea.
Neither do I. But if anybody has any thoughts on that, I thought it was an interesting thought. What would have alerted me to the rotting chicken problem? Other than my nose, but which clearly didn't work. But anyway, so that was some of the work that I've been doing. And I'm going to build some additional sensors because I'm heading back to my apartment on Sunday for some various things. I have a gentleman who's supposedly showing up with a sledgehammer.
Okay.
Sometime on Monday.
Cool.
Well, I've been trying to get somebody to fix my bathtub, and finally I found somebody who's going to do it. So I'm excited. It's been a long time since I've been trying to get that done. So I will be there doing that, but I also want to finish my sensor project, which I paused there, including the installation of a lux sensor in my living room to detect when the light from outside is sufficient to light the room, and when it isn't, it can turn on the lights in the room and close the curtains. So I still think that's a good idea, so I want to do that. And a few other things. I have a whole pile of sensors here to hook up. I also just finished a scanning project, and I have more scanning I want to do. On Sunday, I scanned 1,395 photos. The earliest one that I know of was from 1927. So, I think I've covered every single family photo I can find. But I want to go make sure I didn't miss any. At least I'm being productive. But, a few other bits of news. Google has apparently been highlighting the new app experiences that are arriving for Wear OS with the new Galaxy Watch 4. So I have to ask you, Jerry, are you going to get the Galaxy Watch 4?
I don't know, man. I really like my Galaxy Watch. I mean,
but you have to move forward. You can't move backward.
I'm not moving backwards. I'm standing still.
Yes, but if you're standing still and other people are moving forward, it looks like you're moving backwards.
Yeah, but the new Galaxy Watch 4 is kind of boring looking.
Well, again, I'm just happy that Google's spending some time with Wear OS. But I'm not going to jump in on the ground floor of the new version. I'm going to wait until more devices have it, so I have more of a choice. I do have good news, though. My Pine Time has arrived.
Ooh.
Before you say, how is it? It arrived 100 miles away. I'll find out on Sunday. But
That's funny.
I shipped it to my apartment. I didn't realize it was going to take this long to get there. It's probably still sitting out there. Hope my neighbor took in the mail. Anyway, so in addition, Google announced that they're going to allow app developers to create Wear OS tiles. So that could be a good thing or a bad thing. Whenever they open up an API, I'm thrilled because I like new APIs. But I'm also worried that some developers will annoy my experience by adding, let's just say, poorly thought out implementations that I can't get rid of.
Yeah.
So, again, pros and cons. I love the idea of more tiles. I love the idea that developers can be creative and add more things to my watch. But again, don't know what's going to happen. So Android 12 is around the corner. It's apparently reached platform stability.
Ooh. And that means everybody needs to start getting their apps ready.
Yeah, it means all of the APIs are ready. They're still going to be doing bug fixes because it's still in beta, but they're not going to change any of the APIs, so you can start developing for it.
Nice.
If you use Google's smart displays, mostly the Nest ones, you're going to get an air quality widget on the screen.
What?
I like air quality widgets, but I think Google's doing this because of all the concern about air quality in California, where there have been, last summer and this summer, there have been a lot of fires. And I think I told you it was like 2 weeks ago that the fires from California came to New York. As in the haze from there actually traveled that long a distance and was affecting us here. So I care about air quality as well. If you haven't switched from Hangouts to chat, they are apparently signing users out of Hangouts as part of a way to encourage them to switch to Google Chat. Now, as a result of that, apparently so many people have been annoyed by this that they are leaving a large amount of 1-star reviews on the chat app on Android. Now,
That's funny.
Well, some of their comments are legitimate. That if this is meant to be a replacement from Hangouts, why are some of the features of Hangouts not incorporated that were particularly useful? And they do have a list of things that chat should do that Hangouts did well. Now, I had the same comment when Google Talk was replaced with Hangouts. There were things I didn't like about Hangouts. Some of them they did something with. But again, they weren't really rushing this transition. You would think that they would have done some of those things. if you use Google Tasks, and I really want to use Google Tasks, or let me rephrase that, I want to be better at organization, so I would like some better task management in my life. But apparently it's been updated to make list management easier. Do you use any sort of task management, Jerry?
I do.
What is your task management secret? How do you keep track of your tasks?
I use Todoist, and it is on my phone screen, the very top. It's like on my front page, right underneath the clock.
Okay, and you find that works for you?
I do.
Because I'm getting to the point where I can keep a lot of things in my head, but I've realized that I miss things. At work, I do use, they don't let me use anything, so I have to use things that are approved. So I have to use the Microsoft Outlook Task Manager to keep track of my tasks. But I haven't migrated task management to my personal life. And I think I need to, because there are too many things, as you heard, that are on my list of things I want to do for me not to write them down at some point. So maybe I should try Google Tasks again. What do you think?
I don't.
I could try Todoist. It has the Jerry seal of approval.
It works for me. Google Tasks just don't show up in a whole lot of other places. Todoist has a lot of integrations that work for me.
Yeah, and again, I can look around, and I do know somebody who does a organizational podcast. I could always ask their advice, but they're always talking about Macs.
Macs?
As in software that, iOS and Mac software.
MAC.
Yeah, as in they are a Mac and an iPhone user, so their recommendations may not work for me unless there's an equivalent app for another system. By the way, Daryl found a bunch of handheld odor sensors. I need like a smart odor sensor that can notify me remotely, or a sensor I can hook into my system. But apparently they are looking for gases. I do have some gas sensors here. I wonder if any of them would detect that. What gases does rotting meat emit?
No idea.
I'm going to have to research this. Because I also have a volatile organic compound sensor somewhere. I don't know. Is rotting food a volatile organic compound? I'll figure it out. Anybody knows more about this stuff than I do, please do share. Call recording is rolling out in the Google Phone app for Pixel phones.
What?
Well, do you want
Say
to?
it isn't so.
It isn't so. It is so, but you wanted me to say it, so I'm being supportive.
I hope this works. I want it to work. I really want it to work for me.
What sort of recordings do you want to record? Excuse me, what sort of calls do you want to record?
All of my calls. I want to have a record of all of my calls.
Are you going to be telling people you're doing this?
None of their business.
Actually,
Until I need to sue them.
Actually, it may be some of their business depending on the law. Is Florida?
I am in Florida, and Florida is a two-party consent state. So if I were to do that without telling people, I would be breaking the law.
Okay. So are you intending to break the law, or you don't want to answer that question because if you break the law, you don't want any evidence?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay. Enough said. Anyway, moving along, there's an expanded menu for Google Photos memories, which allows for further exploration. So if it gives you one of these memories, you can now explore more about it. Do you like memories, Jerry? It seems like that's sort of the new name. I used to refer to it as like the On This Day feature, where they show you what happened a year ago. But it looks like Google and even Amazon are referring to it as more memories, that they're using that term.
Yes. I like memories. Especially, when you have a daughter growing up, or I imagine it's the same as the son, but when you have a kid growing up and it says, hey, look back 3 years, 5 years, 12 years, whatever. It's nostalgic. It's cool.
But somebody just sent me an article on this, like an opinion piece that was rather critical of this idea. From the I agree with you. I love seeing classic photographs. That's why I just loaded up a whole bunch more that had never been digitized. But somebody sent me this article from BuzzFeed News, which says the title is "My Phone Doesn't Realize My Mother is Dead. Technology has made avoiding painful memories impossible." So that's not really the way I feel, and I do see images of deceased relatives in my feed all the time. But it made me sort of realize for some people that's a bad thing, and it's worth being aware of.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, Daryl believes that rotting organics produce methane and hydrogen sulfide. So I guess I need to see if one of those sensors I have is a methane sensor. Anyway, moving along, Amazon has started a new resale program to cut down on warehouse waste. Because apparently it has been discovered that a lot of the times when people return things, there may not be anything technically wrong with it. It can't be sold as new, but the owners of the property, who are again Amazon resellers, tell Amazon to just dispose of the device, and they end up with all this stuff that they're junking instead, and they're trying to incentivize their partners to let them resell it to make money at whatever rate, rather than what's happening, which is just chucking it.
I like it. I love it.
Well, they also tried to get some of these companies to just sort of donate it or do something with it, but ultimately, perfectly good items ending up in a landfill because they can't be sold as new, or they're slightly damaged, seems like a bad thing.
Yep.
And again, if you're buying a used item or you're buying a returned item, that you know what you're getting into. You know that
Yeah,
that one.
but they're going to have to drop the price more than 5 or 10%.
Yeah, but what we're getting to isn't that you're still making money, and you are not leaving something that somebody might actually use in the trash. So
And that's a win for everybody involved.
yeah, and regardless of whether you are environment friendly, there are other reasons to think this is a good idea, not just if you're concerned about waste in general.
It is one of those times when capitalism and environmentalism are happily aligned.
Yeah, and again, wasting resources is a bad thing regardless. You shouldn't just throw things out just because when you can do something with them. Anyway, moving along, Google released some new Nest cameras and doorbells.
Any peephole ones?
No, the only peephole that I ever saw was the Ring peephole, and I think they've discontinued it.
Yeah.
So I have one Ring peephole, and I've sort of mentioned my peephole before. I really wish somebody would come up with a better peephole cam. So I installed a Ring peephole cam so that I could see my hallway. I do not use it because nobody ever uses the door that the peephole camera is attached to, so it is mostly for security on the hall. The problem is it's battery operated, so that meant I'd have to change the battery. So I actually have inside the battery terminal, I have a USB cable that's running to a charger.
Well, that's cool.
Well, the Ring peephole uses the same type of battery that the Ring 2 and some of the other ones do. And somebody came up with a flat USB cable that you can actually plug into the battery while the battery is inside the camera to keep it constantly charged. So I don't think they intended on using it for the peephole for one of the other cameras, but I just wired it, essentially wired it up the door and around the frame and plugged it in. And as I said, that door is rarely used for people's admittance. It's certainly there for people exiting, but most people leaving the building at the moment go through the other door. So it allows me to watch the hallway. That's how I know when the front door of the building, which is within sight of this door, is left ajar by delivery people, which is one of the reasons why I wanted a camera there. By the way, speaking of cameras, I forgot one project I was working on. I installed the Wyze Cam to RTMP Docker container to try. So rather than trying to flash new firmware on Wyze cameras, I essentially found this piece of software that has reverse engineered the Wise Camera API so it can connect directly to the stream from the camera locally.
That's
And
awesome.
well, the thing is, there's an option there that it will only connect to cameras that are on the local network, as opposed to all the cameras in my account, since I have cameras in multiple locations. So it's constantly looking at the cameras from various, from the local thing, and I'm going to try it out for a few days and see if it taxes the services on my server. By the way, we have a question from Daryl about what's new between the Amazon program that they've done before, used and returned items. What's different now? It's those used and returned items are sold by Amazon themselves. This would be their resellers. Also, I'm getting a message that my internet connection is unstable. That's disappointing. Hopefully that goes away.
One can hope.
Well, again, last time it turned into a 3-hour outage. I'm really going to have to complain to the cable company.
So if we go away, we know whose fault it is.
Yeah, blame Spectrum. I miss my apartment. Fios, whatever you can say about them, has been rock solid lately. I'm hosting a server for my own personal use out of my house, and that hasn't gone down. There is no progress on the Roku, Google, YouTube issue. So that's where Roku has not agreed to the terms that YouTube TV wants, and both sides are saying that the other side is lying about the reason.
Yep.
Yeah, by the way, Roku and Spectrum have still also not come to terms. So you're only allowed to use the Spectrum app if you had it installed before they stopped fighting, or they stopped providing it and started fighting. So, oh well. Facebook, I'm just noticing this seems to be the only provider who's advertising every time they add in a new one-step transfer to other services. So they are a member of the Data Transfer Project, but they're the only ones out of that project who I see advertising every time they add a new integration to their site. So you can now transfer Facebook events to Google Calendar. So for all the things that Facebook has done over the years that I disagree with, and there are certainly many of those, they are finally advertising something I appreciate. They are advertising, yeah, you can leave. In pieces, but you can leave.
Well, keep in mind that this was a strategy that worked for Excel. Making it easy to leave gave people the confidence to come in.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying that there's necessarily a problem. I'm just saying it's interesting that Facebook is doing that, and the other companies who are part of this just don't say anything about this project, even though apparently they're still participating. Courtesy of Kevin Toffel over at Stacy on IoT, one bit of advice that I thought was helpful: do not get cute when naming your smart devices.
Because apparently naming them funny things makes it harder for the system to identify which thing you're actually talking about.
Well, not only that, you also have the fact that if you have devices that have similar names and you don't think about your names, then it's going to be confusing when you try to activate things. So you do have to do some sort of thought before you name things. But, that's the way everywhere. I'm sure that, Jerry, you had a lot of thought before you named your various offspring of what names to give them.
Not really. I just kind of, whatever came to mind.
You just said, oh, that name sounds good. I'm just going to saddle them with it for the rest of my life. Or their life. Well, actually, I suppose they could legally change it, but
For the rest of their lives, or at least for the first 18 years.
yeah, well, again, think more about how, you don't have to think about what you're going to name your device for 18 years, but give it a little thought. Since years ago, I mentioned on this program that the EU had banned roaming charges within the EU. I wanted to mention that Vodafone is the latest UK carrier to reinstate roaming charges after Brexit, after all the carriers promised they wouldn't be doing that.
Well, they didn't promise they wouldn't do it. They said they had no plans to do it. And as we know, plans change.
Yeah, that is accurate. But again, it's not a surprise. When a company says, we have no plans to charge you something we used to charge you, but we weren't allowed to charge you, the answer is yes, we don't have plans now, but now that you've suggested it, we're going to start making those plans. Anyway.
We're planning, but those plans have not been solidified yet, so we have no plans.
Yeah. It's all semantics. The latest TCL TVs are now going to be running Google TV. So the TCL...
Oh, no.
Well, TCL came out with the line of Roku TVs. And I bought one of them. Not only did I buy one of them, but...
Man, I don't know how I feel about this.
But I encouraged, I have a relative who I encouraged to buy it.
Really?
A TCL with
Google TV
Roku.
versus Roku?
Well, there are advantages to both. Especially
You
now.
can get YouTube TV on Google TV.
Well, I was going to go with you can sideload applications onto a Google TV. You can't sideload applications onto a Roku. You could develop your own Google TV application. So you may have more opportunities with Google TV. And again, Google seems to be pushing the platform, so there may be more developers interested in writing for it. Who's interested in writing a Roku app?
A lot of people.
No, I meant to
There's
this.
a lot of Roku apps.
No, I know. I meant
They're
to.
not hard to write.
No, I know they're not hard to write, but what I'm saying is that you can write it. You can essentially take your existing Android app and just do a different view of it. If you have, so there's more portability there. There's better integration. You know, I'm tempted the next time that I buy a TV to review whether or not I want it to have Google or Roku. Just bear in mind, I don't have plans to buy a TV right now. But I want to mention it. T-Mobile apparently has started offering a beta program of fiber home internet.
Yes, but only in Manhattan and limited areas of Manhattan.
Yeah.
So,
By the way, if there's still a problem with my audio, I will see about rewiring the connection and figuring out why the upstream is getting unstable.
I don't think your audio problem is a wire problem. I think it's an internet problem.
Yeah, the problem is the internet is showing as stable on the wired computers. So this computer is not wired because I ran out of USB ports, so I better go find a hub. When I upgraded the laptop because of the problems that I was having with it before, I switched to a laptop that does not have a built-in Ethernet port. So I have the Ethernet wire sitting right here. I just have to go find a hub because this computer only has two USB ports and one is feeding your audio and one is outputting the other audio. So I will bring a USB hub the next time I get a chance. Sure, I have a USB Ethernet port somewhere here. Anyway, that aside, I always try to wire things. It's much more reliable. But the thing I always worry is if you're in a beta program for home internet, then how do you know the company will continue to do it? Look at Google Fiber. Isn't that the same problem?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. But I think it's just a little early to suggest that T-Mobile has started offering fiber when it's a limited rollout in a single market.
Yeah. That's starting. It's just very, very early starting. And finally, Google is adding an interactive periodic table to search, because why not? I think I've stunned you, Jerry. Or I lost Jerry. One or the other.
I just heard absolutely none of that.
Google is adding an interactive periodic table to search.
Because yay, right?
Well, why can't they?
I don't know.
By the way, I am watching the computer that's doing the audio streaming, and that one is not showing an unstable audio connection. So it must be the Wi-Fi. So I will go get my wired adapter next week. Anyway, so that brings us to the end of things I can think of to talk about. Unless, Jerry, you have something on your mind that you haven't talked about yet.
Now, other than I think we should cut it short while we still have internet.
Yeah, and it is possible because the last time this was happening, it was not because of the Wi-Fi. It was actually because the house internet went down again. So hopefully it's not that, because that annoyed me last time.
Yep.
How am I supposed to decide if I like Stranger Things if I can't actually watch it?
That's an easy no. You won't like it. It's weird.
I don't know. I watched one episode. Nothing weird happened yet.
Okay.
You probably have to get 2 or 3 episodes in before something weird happens. Besides, there's new Lower Decks. I could watch that instead.
All right. Well, I do have one additional comment.
Comment away.
Okay. The Galaxy Watch 4
Yes?
is, in my opinion, kind of small, kind of plain. However, there is also a Galaxy Watch 4 Classic, which is the style that I would appreciate. It's also like $100 more, but I think it looks good.
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to more choices in the new Wear OS, which will probably be next year.
Yep.
So on that note, I'm going to agree with you that we should quit while we're ahead and end the podcast.
All right. So, until next week.
Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, Daryl.
Bye. And thank you, Daryl, for coming to see us. We love it.
Yeah, we appreciated his rotting organics producing methane comment. Until next week.
Recording stopped.
Oh, well, hopefully it isn't the internet again, because that really